right, we are a couple minutes early, but I will go ahead and get started since I am right here. I am going to be doing a presentation on exploring devices, particularly our library deals with Chromebooks, Rokus, and Hotspots. So I'll be talking about that, sharing our experience with that. I am Christopher Brannon again, and so I wanted to share what we have done with our devices. I've had an interesting few years diving into these devices. We have had Rokus around, and if you don't know what a Roku is basically a device that you can do streaming on. We've had those around the longest, and then we added on Hotspots and Chromebooks during the pandemic, and they all have their different quirks about them. I've developed some really nice methods for myself in managing those devices, and I wanted to share those experiences. So just a shot of what we have put together. We have the Chromebooks, we have them in cases, and we've labeled them the way that we want them labeled. We've done the same thing with our Rokus. They're packaged up in bags, and then we just moved our Hotspots over to bags. They were in little plastic cases that actually T-Mobile provided for us initially when we started with Hotspots. But when we upgraded to 5G Hotspots, those Hotspots were a little bit bigger, didn't fit in those cases any longer, so we moved over to bags like we did with the Rokus. So here are some things that we did. We had to tie for like Chromebooks. We had to tie our domain to a Google Workspace admin console so that we could manage those Chromebooks. We bought our Chromebooks. That was fun because I had to figure out what Chromebooks we wanted to be able to share. We did not go with high-end models. We went with the cheap stuff. I mean, these things are going to get beat up, and we didn't want to pay an exorbitant amount on replacement on these. The fascinating thing with the Chromebooks is we have had some beat up quite a bit. I've had some keys missing. I've had some Chromebooks melted by candles. Oh my gosh. So interesting stuff. The nice thing about these Chromebooks, at least the ones that I've purchased, I've been able to, if I had one that just completely stopped working, there was a part that didn't work. I've had cameras go out, or microphones go bad, or keyboards go bad, or whatever, or power brick go bad. I have learned over the past year how to Frankenstein some of these things together. So I have, this one has these parts working, this one has these parts working. I just take them apart and start putting them together and getting another working Chromebook out of it. So they're not too complicated inside. They're not as complicated as a laptop. So they're a little bit easier to for a tech guy to sit and piece things together that are working. And so I've been able to do that. So cheap models, but I've been able to keep some of them going by taking them apart and working on them. But we bought these tough cases for them so that we could protect them if people put them through book drops. So that's been a good purchase. They were a little bit more rugged than a standard soft shell. So we bought the Chromebooks, bought the appropriate case for them. We purchased license for the Chromebooks. I was researching this. This was the most confusing part for me. It was getting the Google Workspace admin console going was very foreign to me, and then getting the licenses. What licenses do I use? Found that we could get lifetime licenses that we could migrate to replacement units, so that when a Chromebook went missing and never came back, or it was damaged, if I bought a replacement, I could transfer that license over to the new device. And so it's just a matter of having the appropriate number of working licenses available to keep these devices going. I had to create lockdown organizational units within that workspace. I basically having to tell what the rules are that these Chromebooks abide by, what people can and can't do on them. What user account that it logs into. It logs in as a guest and it automatically goes to our website, and they can't monkey with the settings. I did some initial lockdowns on most of the settings, but I had left it so that people could, select the Wi-Fi that they wanted to connect to. I also had left at the time, if they needed a different keyboard layout for some reason, they could change that. And I soon discovered I didn't want to do that because people left it on a different setting. And when the Chromebook came back in, it wasn't typing right. So I had to lock that down. So I learned some things on that. I also had to define, what would happen when I would lock down or disable that Chromebook. And so it displays, a message that the Chromebook is overdue. You're a very bad person and you need to return this immediately. No, I don't tell them you're a bad person, but I do, give them ample instructions to, say, it's time to bring this back. Other people want it. So
can you send messages remotely?
No. Basically, the disabled screen gives them the information that they need, and I do communicate with them through an email to let them know that's why it was locked down. But that's basically all the communication that we do. I'm also able to make organizational units that I can do testing in. So if I'm going to change some things within that workspace, or change a behavior, I'll throw one of the Chromebooks in that test unit and then adjust the rules that I want to play with and see how that works. So it makes it very easy for me to test things out and then apply those changes to the working organizational unit for all the Chromebooks that are in production. Again, you want to package things up the way that you need. I've labeled things, and I've had to learn, okay, where do I want to put barcodes on these things when we're scanning them. Initially they were on the lid, but when they're locked into or strapped into the case the way they are, it makes it very difficult to get to those barcodes. So I eventually moved the barcode on the front of the screen so that search staff could find it a little bit easier and scan it better. So, but making sure that things were, labeled. I labeled all the parts. I tend to, if I have something like with the Rokus or the Chromebooks or the Hotspots, if they have parts, I'll stick labels on there. This is part, this is 1 of 4, and 2 of 4, 3 of 4, 4 of 4 on all the different parts, so people can keep track of what parts missing, if they have all the parts there when they're returning things. So I like to label that stuff. So package it up the way that works for you, and keeping track of all that stuff, and for the search staff when stuff is coming through. And then you have to catalog it. I managed to, well, let's see here. On some things I catalog myself, but I'm not a cataloger. So, I'll tend to do the basic framework for the cataloging, and then I'll hand it over to our cataloger and say, hey, can you take a look at this and see if we need to have any other information in this. The big thing that I do with the cataloging is that I make sure that I have serial numbers in the private notes. So that's a good way for me to keep track of which, what's on, each item. I number the Chromebooks, but I like to keep track of those serial numbers on the record itself. I've also, I didn't have this listed here, I also go through with a scribe and etch, Coeur library on the different parts, just to make sure that people aren't, oh, this is an adapter I can use with my computer. I've been needing one, so I'll just keep this. So I like to ascribe that stuff. So I make sure everything is edged. And then we deploy them and cross your fingers, hoping that things work out right. And like I said, we've had some issues. We've had some melted keys. I don't know why a person was working on a Chromebook with a candle over it. That was a little odd. But for the most part, this has gone fairly smoothly. And for Chromebooks are probably the easiest items to deploy and to deactivate as far as equipment that we loan out. I think that these are my favorite of all the devices that we loan out. Our Rokus, there's a lot of this that's similar in packaging, but the things that we did with the Rokus, I created an email account for each Roku. So I have like a Roku 1 at cdalibrary.org and Roku 2 and 3. We have 4 of them at this time. We're looking to add more in the near future. I subscribe to each streaming service for that device. We have several streaming services. We do Netflix. We do used to be HBO Max. It's Max now. Hallmark, Hulu. I did initially, when I started this project, I did check with the streaming services to make sure that they were okay with this. Basically, we installed the service on the device and we locked down settings so that people can't go and install it on their own device or change things on the device. So it's basically locked down. They could accidentally log out of the service or reset the device, which then I have to go through and reset everything. But I generally don't check them when they come back in to make sure that they're all logged in and working. I usually leave it up to the patron to let me know, and I'll turn that around quickly for them as quickly as I can on those. But so we do have an account for each streaming service for each device. I know that some of these some of the streaming services will allow you to have multiple devices. And as long as that's within their agreement, you can stream up to 2 devices or 3 devices. You could go that way if you wanted to, but I wanted to make sure that if I did something, if I deactivated a device, it didn't have any kind of, or you were watching something, it wasn't having an impact on another device that was, you got 2 people trying to stream the same thing, and it jumps them from one episode to a farther episode because somebody else is streaming it at the same time. So we avoided that by having the separate accounts. I just didn't want to have there any kind of cross contamination between one device and another. I have a Voodoo account for the library, and I only have 1 account for that because I can use that in as many devices as I want. But we have a Voodoo account, and when we purchase DVDs, Blu-rays, often they come with a digital copy now. And so I'll link those digital copies to our Voodoo account. So we have 400 some titles or more in our Voodoo account that people can access. So if it's not available on one of the streaming services, it may be in our Voodoo account. So that's worked very well. Lock down all the settings on the Rokus, we package them up, we catalog them, deploy, and again, cross your fingers. The Rokus are a little bit more challenging if I have to deactivate them. Initially, what I was doing, if I needed to get these back and they were overdue, what I would do is I would unlink the device from the Roku account, and basically that just shut everything off. But what it did is it wiped out the apps and made it so that you had to log back into everything when the item returned. The workaround I had for that was, instead of deactivating or unlinking the device, was to throw it into guest mode. So basically I throw it in guest mode, and it allowed it took away the icons, and I could display a very short message. I had to be very concise on the message that I could display on there. And I said, "This is overdue. Please return it." So I throw it into guest mode, and when I get it back, I turn the guest mode off. All our icons come back. I don't have to reload all that stuff, but I do have to go through each of the apps because some of the apps still retain the logins and some of them don't. So I have to make sure that all the apps that we have, all the streaming services are able to log in again. So some of them I have to still log into. So it's still a little bit of process if you deactivate and reactivate the Rokus, but for the most part, we've streamlined it as best we could.
Quick question, how many of these Rokus do you have?
Like I said, I have 4 right now. We're planning to do a few more. Yeah. Hotspots. We tested services in our area, asked lots of questions. Not all vendors, not all cell services are equal. We checked with Verizon in our area, and while they did offer an unlimited data stream, it wasn't truly unlimited. We found out that after a certain amount of usage, they throttle the bandwidth down, and that's not useful if you've got other people wanting to use that hotspot for the remainder of that time of the month. So that didn't work well for us. We found that T-Mobile works very well with libraries. T-Mobile does have unlimited bandwidth, and so we ended up going with them. That was our experience. So I haven't shopped around or looked at other cell services since then. I did shop the major ones, and T-Mobile fit the bill for us at the time. They had good coverage. They had true unlimited data. They had a reasonable price, which is really nice because when we deactivate a hotspot or suspend a hotspot, we're not being charged for that device, which is really nice. We got set up with the T-Mobile government portal, which was really nice. Initially, when we started, I had to call somebody to say, hey, we need to suspend this hotspot. And it could take some time to go through that process. It was a little cumbersome having to try and get somebody on the line to do that. You can still do that, but with the government portal, you can specifically check all the items that you want to suspend at once, and it's a little bit faster process. But the one drawback to that is it's like doing an order. Somebody on the other end has to fulfill that order. So you don't have really a true direct connection to those devices to turn them on and off. Somebody on the other end is doing it for you. They're just fulfilling that order. The nice thing about T-Mobile too was that they were able to apply a state mandated filter to the hotspots. So our state in Idaho had decided that the libraries needed to all provide filtered access, and so that included our hotspots, and so we had to apply those same minimum basic filtering options to the hotspots. And fortunately, T-Mobile had an option for that. I don't know about the other services, so that worked for us. And again, we package, we catalog, we deploy, and we cross our fingers. You don't want to forget to engrave everything again. Some people might find, oh, I have a bad cable. This cable works well for me. I'm just going to keep this one and stick in my bad cable. We've had that a few times. Some of these items, we just have spare parts on hand and we change them out. They're the cables or the adapters. Some of these are low cost enough that we just chalk it up to usual wear and tear or loss on these, so we don't go too crazy on it. But if the bag is damaged or the hotspot is damaged, or the Roku or the Chromebook, if there's significant cost to us, then we do charge them for those devices. We record all the serial numbers to make sure that they're keeping track of all that. Like I said, we keep a supply of cords, labels, packaging, adapters, and cases. And you need to expect things to wear out or disappear over time. I've had no loss on hotspots. Those are hot ticket items. We have a lot of holds on those hotspots. But fortunately, we haven't had a lot of those disappear. I think I've had like one disappear in the past 4 or 5 years, 4 years, I think, that we've been doing this. We've had a couple Chromebooks disappear. We've had more damage than Chromebooks, but again, our Chromebooks, they're generally $300 or less on those Chromebooks. So, we're not buying high-end stuff because we know that damage and theft occur. The Rokus, we've had no disappearance of the Rokus, which is really nice. Cataloging, keep the general record as generic as possible. We do this so that several libraries can jump on the same record, so that a person doesn't have to pick what hotspot they're picking from what library. We try to keep all those hotspots together. So I have a few libraries on the same record with our hotspots. We generalized the record in that we were saying these were 4G hotspots, but because our library upgraded to 5G and theirs didn't, it made more sense to keep the record a little bit more generic on that. So try to generalize the record as much as possible, but make it identifiable. Keep specific device information in an item, holding private notes. So we on some of our items, I keep serial numbers. I will keep a few other specific pieces of information. I can't remember off the top of my head what I do, but I keep all that in the private note for the item. Keep note of costs for individual parts if you plan on charging patrons for them. So you could consider now, with some of the new features with Koha, you could consider cataloging the parts individually and grouping them as a unit under a barcode so that you could charge them for those items individually if you wanted. I haven't played around with any of that. We just have one record for the whole shebang, and I just keep note of how much does it cost to replace a power brick, or a specific part, a remote or something of that nature. And have a strategy for late items, which I think leads me into the next point here. Sure. Okay. For late items, we created a damage status called deactivated. Prior to this, I was placing late items. I would run a report. I would keep track of these late items. I did this because we had a certain number of items that I wanted to get moving, especially the things that had a lot of holds on them. I wanted to keep them moving as much as possible. So I'd run a report. I would place an item on hold for myself, and then I would deactivate the item either through the Chromebook workspace, or I would remove the item from the Roku account, or I would suspend the hotspot. I would put the hold on there for the overdue items, but this had more potential for failure. Sometimes the hold didn't go right. Sometimes somebody was bumped up in the hold for some reason. And so it went on to the next person, deactivated, and we didn't want to do that. The damage status is nice because it overrules the holds and sends it home. So, it disregards the holds, it sends it right back home, and then staff know what to do with it from there. I created a report to track all 3 types of devices. Basically, I have a deactivation report, and this report I can run manually, but I also had Bywater set it up so that it was emailed to me on a daily basis. It's a really cool report that has evolved over the years. I think I show that later here, but it basically tracks if devices are overdue a certain number of days. So, you know, I wait for a couple days. If it's a couple days overdue and it hasn't shown up, then I act on it. So it checks if it's a certain number of days overdue and not deactivated yet. So it's tracking both of those pieces of information. It tracks if devices are deactivated but not returned. And it also tracks if devices are deactivated and returned. So basically I have 3 statuses within my report. You know, what needs to be deactivated, what's deactivated and I'm waiting for, and what's deactivated and waiting for me to reactivate it. So that report shows all of that information. When the items are overdue, I mark the item deactivated, I deactivate the item, and I send the patron an email. When the items return, I remove the deactivated status, I reactivate the item, and I send it on its way. So deactivating and reactivating items. Deactivating Chromebooks is the easiest of the 3. As I said, it's instant and easy to manage in the Google Workspace admin console. And the Rokus, this is probably the most difficult one. As I mentioned earlier, I won't go rehash all of this, but it turned, you know, it was a wrestling match with, you know, these apps. In some of them will, you know, if I throw this into guest mode and then take it out of guest mode, I end up with some of these accounts being logged out, and I have to make sure I go through all of the streaming services on that device and make sure that people can get back into them again. So, but guest mode was the best way to do this, as opposed to just disassociating the device with the account. With the hotspots, there's difficulty in. The difficulty is somewhere in the middle between Chromebooks and Rokus, so it's more of a time issue or delay. I have found that when I deactivate the hotspot, if I tell it to suspend, there's a few things with T-Mobile that's kind of funky. First of all, you have to wait for somebody on the other end to address your request. But I find that usually they're pretty fast about it. They say, you know, give it a couple hours, but I've found that within receiving the confirmation that they've done it, it's a lot faster than that, but there is a little bit of a waiting time on that. So there is a third party involved in that deactivation and reactivation. I'm also limited on the suspensions on those. I can say, okay, please suspend this, but I have to use a certain type of suspension. That suspension can only be scheduled out for about a month, and then it automatically reactivates. So I have a file that I keep track of when how long suspension is lasting on a device, so that I can re-up that suspension if it still hasn't shown up. Yeah. So it's like I said, it's somewhere in the middle between the other 2 devices in complexity, but for the most part, things work really well. Did I mention to help staff catch that the device is deactivated so that they know to put it on my shelf and not just turn it around? I've created a unique audio message that plays when the item is checked in. So when an item has that deactivated status, I have an actual voice prompt that's saying this item is deactivated. You know, or it says warning, this item has to be deactivated. So sometimes it actually startles them that there's this voice coming from Koha. But yeah, I recorded. I went on and found a thing where you could script something and AI would, you know, read it off for you. And I recorded that and then saved that into Koha and have it look for that particular status on the check-in screens. And so it'll give them that warning, and it works well. Those items have been showing up on my shelf on a consistent basis, which is really nice. So about the report, I wrote a report to track what needs to be suspended, what is suspended, and what needs to be reactivated. The report includes all the details about the patron and the item. It includes links straight to the page needed to change the status of the deactivated. So if it is deactivated, I have a link in the report. I click on it, it takes me straight to where I can change that status. I don't have to go fishing around for that information. So it's right there in the report. It includes links that create an email addressed to the patron if they have an email address, which includes the subject, the body, and the body of the text. This is something that I learned that was new. You can do that in a report. You can, I knew that you could link, link to an email address, but I did not realize, oh, you can include the subject and you can include the body of the text. So all I have to do is click on their email address in the report. It opens up an email, it's all ready to go, and all I have to do is press send, which is really nice. So some things that could use improvement. None of these items currently have an API for direct activation or deactivation. And it's very unlikely that they ever will. I was trying to start up some communication with T-Mobile. They do have some APIs for information about the device, but nothing just yet to control that suspended mode on there. If there were APIs, I think that it might lead to the ability for us to find a way to communicate between Koha and them to suspend or restore services based on overdues sometime in the future, if they would ever do that. Again, it's unlikely that they will, but that would be a huge plus in the future. Roku needs to improve their guest mode. I haven't tried other streaming devices like the Fire Sticks or the Apple TV Plus device, but the Roku does need improvement on their guest mode at least. These devices, these things are are not catering towards what we use them for. We're kind of having to make use of what's available in their current functionality. They obviously incorporated the Rokus to help others use the device, but recovery from guest mode is only 50% there. So it's really weird that they have a guest mode that doesn't recover from guest mode as cleanly as it should. It's really strange. The hotspots, at least T-Mobile, are still a bit cumbersome in management. Again, we picked T-Mobile because of their coverage and their service. I don't know if Verizon or AT&T or Sprint, or well, actually Sprint's part of T-Mobile now, but I don't know if any of those other services have better mechanisms in place. But T-Mobile is a little cumbersome in the management. It'd be helpful if there was direct access to those devices rather than having a third party involved in deactivating and reactivating them. But that's where we stand right now. So that's all I have on our experience with devices. That is my contact information if you have questions about it, but I can take a couple questions because of time if anybody has any questions. There you go.
Would you be willing to share a little bit about your logic for how you set up that automatic email link that fills in the subject and body? Because that sounds awesome, and I would love to know more about how to do it.
I could show it on here, but it's I would probably post something. In fact, we probably do an every other Thursday video about it at some point to really take it apart and show it off. The report was built off of some of the videos that we actually did. George did it in the first season of our videos, a really neat project called the dashboard. And that's where I learned to incorporate all the different things that I've incorporated with the layout of the report. But the email thing was an extra bonus, and it just saved my time a bit. We could certainly do a video on that.
I have a couple of questions. This is Sarah from Portsmouth. The most important one is how to get koha to help you route the item to staff for maintenance. You said you have an audio work, and how does your holds work with that? If you have, do you have an automatic hold when it's returned? Or how do you disrupt the holds queue effectively?
I'm not sure if there's there may be specific settings and we just have it set that way in there to begin with, but I found that, you know, if we had a damaged status, that it would ignore the holds and send it back home. So that's basically, so I created a new damaged status called deactivated. So I did that and made sure that that status, we
apply that status.
I apply that myself. So when I get the report, I'll go through the list and see what needs to be deactivated. I'll click on the link to it. It takes me basically when you're in Koha and you click on the barcode of an item, it takes you to that page where you can change the different statuses. And that's the page that I go to, and I just change that status there.
So if it's not overdue, you still change it down to your.
No, it has to be overdue. I don't mess with it if it's not overdue.
So if it's not overdue and you needed to come back to your desk, how do you make it come back to your desk?
I could do the same thing, basically.
So there is a system preference in koha that says allow holds of damaged items or don't allow. So if you set it to don't allow holds of damaged items, then by switching the status to the damaged status, then when it comes in, it's not involved.
All right. Anyone else?
There's a question online, is there a cost for the Chromebook management software?
There's a cost for the licenses. That's the only cost that I've run into. Setting up the console itself. I can't remember if there was an initial fee on setting that up, but I mean, once you have it, it's yours, and if you get the right licenses, it's a one-time fee. So there's no ongoing costs with that. Yeah, once you've established the workspace, you're good to go. And once you've bought the license, if you bought the lifetime license on the device, then you're good to go. All right. Well, we are at the end of our time. So if you have any other questions, please feel free to reach out to me, and I will look into that training session.